You're about to watch is very serious. It was 10 years in the making to record. It was even harder for me to review the recording. I was worried that my testimony could hurt my credibility as a minister of Jesus Christ. I was reassured, however, that this testimony will show the transformative power of Jesus Christ. You must know that I am not reveling nor boasting in my past wickedness, but simply showing and testifying of who I was before the Most High God showed me His grace and mercy. Enjoy. Benvenuto nella famiglia di Gesù Cristo. Welcome. Praise the Lord, saints of the Most High God. This is the Capo for Christ channel, and I'm Brother G. And we have to go somewhere else for the intro. Apologies for the shoddy intro. My intention was to film outside. Unfortunately, it had rained most of the night, really hard, and I was filming at like 4 something in the morning. It was really humid. Bugs were out. Frogs were. It was just not conducive to record. So anyway, we are still going to continue on with the video. This is going to be part 3 of my testimony, my seat in the Mafia for a spot at the Lord's table. This is going to be the toughest part of my testimony, probably the most interesting for most of y'all out there to hear. So one thing I want to do before we get into it is explain who brings this channel to life, because our sponsor is Jesus Christ of Nazareth. He's the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords. He's the Most High God, and every knee will bow to Him one day, willingly or unwillingly, okay? Secondly, we're sponsored by Gaetano's New York Kitchen, which is my restaurant and catering company. If y'all are in the Atlanta area, please check us out for one of the most best meals of your life, guaranteed. And yeah, so that's that. So let's get into it here, okay? So like I said, this is my testimony of how I came to the Lord. My seat in the Mafia for a spot at the Lord's table. Before I get into any of that, I want to actually begin with a kind of far out there testimony. This is a memory that I had. When I say a memory, I mean it's very real. It's more vibrant and real than actual memories, because it was a memory of me before I came to this earth. I know that sounds crazy. I know that sounds crazy. But it is real. I've only shared this testimony with like a couple people. A couple I should not have. One I should have. But yeah. Anyway, so what I want to say is this. Before I was me, before I was Gaetano, I was somewhere else. Okay? And the feeling of love, peace, tranquility, it just can't be explained. And it was more real and vibrant than this place. I remember the floor was like this translucent green that you could see through. And the best way I could explain it was like I was like almost like what you do with a tablet when you're flicking through and stuff like that, through different apps or whatever. Now, that's what I was doing with like space-time. That's what it seemed like. And I could see people in their lives, their day-to-day lives, what they were doing and things like that. And through this, what I was doing was I was choosing my parents, who were going to be my parents on this earth. And it was like I could just flick through different people's lives and watch them. And that's what I was doing. So I chose my parents, and the last thing I remember before I got shot down here, because it was like getting shot down here, a huge tunnel, and boom, was a voice, a stern voice, but a loving voice, the voice of God telling me, do not forget who you are. And I remember, like, I looked back kind of, and I was like, how could I forget who I am? and boom, I was gone. Okay? Now, looking back at that now, the colors that I saw was like how it speaks in Revelation about how the emerald, the color of in the throne room of God. I didn't know that that's what it was. I didn't know nothing about nothing at this time, you know. But, so anyway, that's just a little testimony. I also have memories of being in the womb, infant memories. There was a pillow. I was in bed with my father sleeping as an infant. And I remember his pillow looked like, to me in the in the picture, it reminded, I was looking at the picture, it triggered my memory of this. Because most people, if you really like look back and try to think of your first memory, I guarantee you can't think of something before you were 4 years old. That's how it just works for most people. And for me, it's the same thing, but I do have these other memories. So anyway, this pillow, it reminded me of like a subterranean garage, one of the pillars down there. That's what I thought this pillow was. And the reason I say that was because my dad had an apartment building when I was younger, and he had a subterranean garage, and the pillars there, I remember, you know, I have memories of them, of what they are, but the side of his pillow reminded me of that. So that's how I know this other memory I just shared with y'all was before I was born. Okay? Take that for what you will. I know it sounds crazy, and we're going to begin this video. We're going to get into the Mafia and my life in it before I came to God. And I know I keep dancing around it because this is a very tough thing to talk about, especially coming from where I came from. So we're going to begin with a piece of scripture. We're going to start in Acts chapter 20, 24. So I've spoken before how I like to sometimes use scripture and use it as a prayer for things. And that's what we're going to do here. Acts chapter 20, verse 24. But none of these things move me, neither count I my life dear unto myself, so that I might finish my course with joy and the ministry which I have received of the Lord Jesus to testify the gospel of the grace of God. And that is exactly what I intend to do. And that is exactly what I am going to do in Jesus Christ's mighty name. Because Jesus is a God that saves. He is a God that goes from glory to glory. And he takes the dirty things of this world, he cleans them up, and the Father gets glory out of it. So I am a story of being a goon coming to glory. And y'all out there, you can be a goon and come to glory yourself and get washed under the blood of Jesus Christ and live a whole new life. He will take away everything, okay? The point of this channel is to shine the light of Jesus Christ in a world that continues to get darker and darker by the day. Okay, so before we get into my personal testimony, I need to talk about the RICO laws a little bit, because they were written by Rudy Giuliani and some other guy in the early 70s. Rudy Giuliani was an up-and-coming prosecutor. He became lead prosecutor in district attorney in New York. We'll get into that too, because I actually have a testimony about him while I was in the life, and we'll talk about that later in this testimony. But one thing y'all need to realize about the RICO laws is that there is no burden of proof needed in court. It's not like most other court cases when the government brings somebody to trial, there's burdens of proof. Now, they don't need to do that with RICO cases. They also go up and down the line, and everybody is guilty of the same charge. That's how they get people to rat on each other, and they get, they're able to just decimate and lie and corrupt and do whatever they want to do. They throw the Constitution right out the window, and that is what the RICO laws do. Because there could be a person that, say, at one point he was charged with murder, right? But he beat the case. He's acquitted of murder, so now the laws have a double jeopardy thing where they cannot bring somebody to trial again for the same crime. However, if it's a federal RICO case, even though a person was acquitted of murder, they can bring that up to tarnish that man's reputation and make him look like a killer in the eyes of the court, in the eyes of the jury. They can do that. And they also don't allow their rats' lives to be delved into. So the defense cannot pick apart a rat's life the way that they can pick apart a person who has been acquitted of a prior crime. They're bringing it back up. That doesn't happen in normal courts. Okay, it just doesn't happen. So another thing y'all need to know is that everything that you have heard about the mafia has come from rats or law enforcement. The view you're going to get tonight is from neither, because I am neither a rat nor ever been a part of law enforcement or worked with law enforcement. Okay? You are going to get the... Now, I am a saved man. I do not still share these views, but y'all are going to hear things that are going to be tough. And if you can't handle it, I do apologize. But I really don't, because this is, like I said, a person, God has brought me from being a goon to glory. And that's just what it is. So, my last testimony, I had stopped, I believe, once I had moved to Las Vegas. I was 15 years old, and I had given the testimony when I got beat down by the police one night. Okay, so we're gonna kind of pick it up from there, because when we moved to Las Vegas, it was the end of my career in school. I was 15 years old. I had given up school, didn't really care about it. I was boxing. I was with the 10 Goose Gym, traveling back and forth from Big Bear, California, doing fights there, fights in Vegas, different places. I was hanging around the Sons of Italy Club. And at the time, that was where, the boys were. And when I talk about the boys, I'm talking about the guys that ran the city, And basically, I kept my head down, kept my ears open, and my mouth shut. And I heard things that you would not believe. Deals that they were planning for this hotel, that hotel, what they were going to do here, what they were going to do there. And some of the stuff sounded kind of unbelievable, but it would all come to pass. Okay? Another thing that... So just, I got to breeze through some of this. Otherwise, this is going to be a 10-hour video. So some of the things, I was groomed in Las Vegas to be a goon, because that's what I wanted. I wanted to be in the Mafia. And because of my family, because of who my father was, even though he didn't want me to be part of it, he really couldn't stop it from happening. Because I remember we had gone on walk and talks at night through the neighborhood, talking about my future, this and that. And I told him, Pop, I want in, and that's it. There's nothing you can do that's going to stop that. Now, I know that sounds crazy for a 15-year-old to be telling his father, but hey, that's just how it was. So I was groomed. Some of the things I did in Las Vegas was learning how to be part of a cleanup crew, if y'all can read into that, and I had extensive training in that. Other things that I did when I was there, I remember Mike Tyson had recently come home from prison, and one of my jobs was to go to the hotels and sell tickets to his fight. A couple of them, I think three of his fights I had sold tickets to. At the MGM Grand, I'd throw a suit on, go there, just post up, and people would know. they would just know. I met a lot of gangsters from the East Coast, from Philadelphia, all kinds of different crews, because people go to, at least in those days, they went to Vegas to show out. You know what I mean? Tupac was still alive in those days. I was actually around that hotel. I think I was there the night he got killed, early in the night, if I remember correctly. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But what I would do, I'd have these stack of tickets. I'd have a map of the arena. I would take people into the bathrooms, and we would just, I'd show them the seats, different ones. They picked different prices. Boom, boom, boom. We made a lot of money doing that, you know. So that was part of what I did out there in Vegas. A lot of it was just learning how the game went. I had pissed off a maid guy out there, and one day I was literally leaving my house, and I got knocked in the back of the head, and I went to sleep. I woke up, and I couldn't breathe because it was just hot, it was stuffy, it smelled, and I was really getting nauseous when I was in there, and I couldn't breathe. And I kept getting knocked around, and something kept hitting me. And all of a sudden, I was blinded, and I couldn't see because it was so bright. And they had taken me, I was in the trunk of a car, and they dumped me out in Lake Mead, and it was just to scare me. And there was a dead body in the trunk. Excuse me. It's not good remembering these things. I'm getting queasy thinking about it now. I don't want to talk about that no more. But another thing that happened in Las Vegas while I was there, my best friend, he was a little bit older than me, few years older than me. Because when I was younger, even in LA, when I was in California, I had older friends. If I was 12, I was running with guys that were 18, 20 years old. If I was 7, they were 14. So that's just how it was when I was coming up. So my best friend in Las Vegas, the car that I had gotten arrested in the previous testimony, in the previous video, that was a car that me and him had bought together. Now, he was older. I didn't even have a license. He was older, had a license. We went to the dealership with cash, and we actually got turned away at one dealership because they wouldn't deal with us. They thought it was a joke, these young punks coming to buy a new Cadillac. But we had the cash, and we bought it. So anyway, we would trade it off. Like, I would have it for a week, he'd have it for a week, things like that. So I had got word one day that he had to die. It was an order that came down that he had to die. And I flat out refused it. They wanted me to take part in it. And I said, no, absolutely not. I said, y'all kill me if you want, but I ain't doing it. I won't tell him. And unfortunately, I didn't tell him because they killed him. They killed him. And I knew they were going to kill him. And for weeks, I pretended like nothing was wrong. We hung out. We did things together. We went to, had fun. And they killed him. One day he didn't come around, and the car was gone, and that was it. So I got into a lot of trouble in Las Vegas. So my family, my parents, because I was getting very good and making a lot of money and getting a name for myself, I was 15 years old, 16 years old, but because of the trouble I was getting into, the people that I was associating with and around, they said, we're moving. You got to get out of this because this is no good. We're going to New York. Okay, we'll go to New York. Now, my mother, if y'all been following my testimonies, my mother was born and bred in Buffalo. My grandfather, I had one uncle in New York, a ton of cousins, ton of family in Buffalo, ton of family in Union City, New Jersey, in New York City, Bensonhurst, Brooklyn, Manhattan, family all over the place. So, but we moved to Buffalo, and I had quite the little knot of money when we moved to Buffalo. So when we did that, my parents thought, oh, okay, well, we're going to get you back in school and you're going to get back on track and all this and that. Well, it didn't happen like that at first because I was very rebellious, and because I had been coming back and forth from LA to Buffalo when I was younger, starting at 11 years old, I would fly out during the summer to stay with my grandfather. So I had made some friends and connections out there. Plus, the the mafia out there, especially in the early mid '90s, was still very strong and active, and it was the wrong place for my parents to send me if they wanted me to stay away from that lifestyle. So what happened was, within a few months, I actually flew the coop, and because I didn't want to live under their rules, my father's trying to protect me from it. So I left and I bought a house at 16. Now, how does a 16-year-old buy a house? My grandfather had to do all the paperwork and he signed for everything and it was in his name. Now, when I say I bought a house, I did not buy like $1 million house. It was $60,000, okay? And I had the cash for it, and that's what I bought in my grandfather's name. He was an old bootlegger. He was a gangster, and he thought he was looking out for me. He knew how my mother could be. Obviously, that was his daughter, and him and my father, they got along. It was kind of like I imagined, because I was very young when my Uncle Paul got killed. I was turning 5. That the relationship between my grandfather and my father was kind of probably how it was with him and his brother, because my grandfather was more closer to Uncle Paul's age, so I always thought of it kind of like that, and they got along very well for the most part. So other family members, my uncle, well, I'm not going to say his name. Why not? He passed away. My Uncle Joe Sinatra. He was an ex-gangster. He was a born-again Christian. I thought it was a complete joke. I thought it was it was a jerk-off. You know what I mean? Not him, but the whole Christian thing, going to church, all of that stuff. I really did. And he would always tell me, all my friends, they're on the inside looking out. But now I'm on the outside and I'm free. And be your own man. He always told me that. Be your own man. Be your own man. All I wanted to be, though, was a made man. So my Uncle Joe, what he did, he took me around to all the made guys. Said, hey, this is my nephew. And, basically he wants in. He wants to work for y'all. And, let me explain something. Las Vegas, Buffalo, New York had a big hand in the goings on in Las Vegas. Chicago had a huge hand in it. Kansas City, New York City too, but it was more from an administrative point. But Buffalo did have a bigger part than people think in Las Vegas. There's actually an old, I don't know if it's public or not, but there was a phone call from Fat Tony Salerno, who was the front boss for the Genovese family, that ended up doing 100 years, never said a word, died in prison, wasn't the boss of the family, but he got indicted in the commission trial that my Uncle Paul got indicted on. All the bosses of the families did. Uncle Paul got whacked before the trial happened. Fat Tony Salerno was not the boss of the Genovese family, but he took it on the chin. That's kind of funny. Anyway, but there was a phone call from Joe T. Sr., Lead Pipe, and Fat Tony was cussing him out, talking about, yeah, you one-horse town mother effer, why don't you come to New York, play with the big boys, because of stuff going on in Las Vegas. So that was that. My Uncle Joe also took me around to my cousin John, who's a made guy, and he got 2 sons that, my cousins, whatever, I'm not going to get into them. And then when I say my cousin John was a made guy, it's because it's documented. You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to be talking on people saying, yeah, this one's that, this one's this. Because in reality, the lists where the government comes up and says, oh, this guy's this guy's that, he belongs to this family, that family, they don't know nothing. They don't. All they know, like I said, is what rats tell them. The government couldn't find their way to the bathroom without a rat showing them where to piss. For real. And that's the truth of it. I don't want to get off track. But anyway, so my Uncle Joe took me around to my cousin John, who's got Sinatra's trilogy out there. The old man John, not the younger one. Obvious. Well, maybe not so obvious to people. I don't know what y'all think or know. But yeah, so it was going nowhere. Pretty much what he was saying was, leave my nephew alone. Because they did hear and know about what I was doing in Vegas, what I was trained in, my special line of expertise, I guess you could say. It was no secret. They knew. People who needed to know knew. But nonetheless, they left me alone because of my Uncle Joe. Basically telling them to. I even remember at one point I had a meeting with Lead Pipe, the old Joe T. Sr. And he was like, yeah, everybody wants to be a gangster. You're thinking we're handing out credit cards, huh? You want to be a gangster? Like, that's the kind of talk I had. So I had a very big disdain for the whole Buffalo family at that point. And no, that is not the family that I was a part of officially. No, I was not with them. Even though I was there, I was a satellite crew for a bigger family elsewhere. So, that is that. So what did I do when my uncle basically made everybody shut the door in my face? I got into the drug game. First, nickel and diming with weed, and I got into cocaine very fast, selling it, buying 8 balls, flipping it, quarter ounce, flipping it, half an ounce, flipping it, a whole onion, flipping it, getting a big 8, and I grew very quickly that way. Now, my first legitimate job was at Salvatore's Italian restaurant, okay? No, it was called Salvatore's Italian Gardens, and Russ, the owner. He ended up getting screwed by his son for the business, but that's neither here nor there. I started out as a busboy there, okay? And he had grown up with my Uncle Joe, so he gave me a legitimate gig. All I did was sell drugs through that place. I got a job as a busboy. I didn't like that. After probably, I don't know, 6 months, a year maybe, I asked Russ, can I start in the kitchen? And I started in the pantry. He said, sure, why not? You're Joey's nephew, give it a shot. So he didn't know at that time really what I was doing in that place. But the whole place was, everybody that did drugs, that did cocaine there, they got it from me. He had dishwashers, right? In the dish area was this monstrosity because they actually had 2 kitchens. That's how big this place is. This place is not just a normal restaurant. Like, it's huge. So, the dishwashers, some of them were convicts. They were prisoners in jail, right? They had a work release program where they would come work for the day, and then at the end of the night, they'd load up on the bus and go back to jail. So there were things that I had going where certain guys, they even got to go home on weekends. One of the guys, he looked just like Biggie Smalls, just like, his name was Chris too. That was a funny thing. Just like him. I think he was even fatter. He was even bigger than him. He got to go home. He was from Niagara Falls. I give him a package. The weekend would go by. I'd see him Monday morning, big smiles, make money, boom, hit him again at the end of the week because he never wanted to bring stuff back to the facility, but he got to go home on weekends and hustle. There were other guys that went in every night back, which he did too, but he had weekends to go home. There were other guys that were on the work release that, they were hustling. They were getting cocaine from me and hustling in the prison, bringing it in. So, so that's one of the things that I was doing early on there. I got very, very good in the drug game. Now, there was lots of ups and downs too because my first plug, he was a Cuban guy. We called him Cuba. And, things happen. Things happen. When you're making money, fast, and you're meeting all these new people, and you're seeing how the game goes, and then something happens, either they die or they get locked up, Then you're reaching, you're looking for a plug, a new plug. What are you going to do? I learned very early that nothing lasts forever because the game changes. Now, when I was first starting out, a person could get an ounce of cocaine for about $600. So if y'all that know, that's you can get a half an ounce for $300-400 back in those days. That's how cheap it was, and this was raw. Buffalo was a good town because the border was right there, and I used that border like you would not believe. Let me backtrack a little bit because I don't want to get too ahead of this testimony, because I did end up having to go back to school, high school. And the funny thing was, I never even went to high school because I quit when I was 15. And, the people came down on my parents like, yo, your son's not in school. He better get his ass in school or, y'all going to have some problems. So I went and I finessed them, the school, and I got to actually like skip 2 grades. I started in the 10th grade. And I think the last time I was in school was in the 8th grade. It didn't last for long though. Within the first 2 weeks I was there, I fought all the big tough guys in the school and made a reputation there. And I wanted to bring boxing to the PE curriculum. They didn't have it then. I don't think they have it now. And they never did then either because it was too violent. It was too violent. They didn't want to do it. And I ended up dropping out anyway and getting my GED later. We'll get to that part in a little bit. I don't want to skip too much. But then I got to a point in the cocaine game where it was consignment. I would consign dope to people. I had made so much money and I knew how to flip it that if somebody was coming to me and they were buying, say, a half an ounce a week, right, I would front them another half an ounce on top of it. So they just bought one and they got fronted another one. And I would give them, say, a week to pay for it. So the next week, they're paying for the one that I just fronted and they're getting fronted another one. That's how I kept, and it's not like I was the only one doing this. This is usually how the dope game goes. You keep your people hooked to you so that they need you. And you have to enforce it with violence if anybody messes up. Nobody would owe me money for very long without paying because I was very violent and I didn't care. I had no emotions about it. And I did some very bad things to people to collect money for drug debts. And so people didn't end up owing me money for very long. I was very industrious. I got a crew together of my own, little hustlers and things like that. Now, mind you, I'm still young, but I'm making connections. I make connections across the border. I was moving marijuana across from Toronto back to Buffalo, and we were moving hydro blueberry at the time. I think it was going from anywhere from like $3,200 to $3,800 an ounce of that stuff back in those days. And we'll get more into what I was doing across the border a little further down in this testimony. I'm just looking at my notes because I don't want to skip over anything and I don't want to stay too far on anything. So one of the things, okay, so at the age of 21, right, I did mention that I got my GED, and I actually went to college too, and I excelled, and I was selling drugs in college too. I was selling drugs to the college, not to the, well, I had people working for me is what I'm saying, that went to college before I even did, and were pumping work at the college. Now, when I was 21 years old, I learned that I was going to be a father. And two things happened to me when I was 21. So first thing was I learned I was going to be a father. I automatically got an interest in school. I got my GED. I got my ass enrolled into community college, and I had a goal. I was going to be a doctor. I wanted to be a medical doctor. I did. And I could have, because I went pre-med and I went into med school for 2 years. We'll get into that as well in this testimony. Now, because I had to be somebody. I don't know, when I learned I was going to be a father, I had to be somebody, and it couldn't be just what I was. Couldn't just be a gangster, okay? Another thing that happened to me when I was 21 years old was I officially became inducted into the Mafia. I got in touch, well, actually, they got in touch with me, New York City, to me in Buffalo. I went out there, and make a long story short, they knew what I was doing because the Buffalo family, they had their eye, because when I first came there, plus they knew about me from Las Vegas. So they always had their eye on me, and I was kind of like a reckless rebel. I would just do whatever I wanted to do, and that was it. Nobody could touch me, I thought. So when I got the call to New York, because I was making so much money, see, this is how the Mafia works. They're not your friends. There's not one person, and I got to watch how I say this, because to an extent, all gangsters, all Mafia guys that are made guys, they're all dirtbags because they feed off of other people, and they use you and abuse you. And then they want more, okay? Which I ended up becoming and being like. I was already like that in the street without having their protection yet, really. So they made me a soldier, okay? Officially, boom. Was part on a crew out there in Bensonhurst. And I'm not gonna really talk about my work and dealings with the crew I was a part of in Bensonhurst for good reason, because that's a lot of stuff went on there that there's no statute of limitations on, and I'm not talking about. And that's it. So, the whole thing, there was a making ceremony. Some words were said that, the family comes before everything, before your own family. If your mother's dying, you gotta leave her bedside, this and that. Now, the Sicilians in Sicily, they have a little different structure with the making ceremony. It actually involves Freemasonry, because a lot of them are Freemasons, and there is a big connection between the Mafia and Freemasonry, which I'll get into in this testimony as well. It happened a little further down the line for me. So I officially was in. Now, I was part of a crew, officially now, which meant I had a rabbi, okay? For those of y'all who know what a rabbi is, it had nothing to do with being a Jew. It has to do with somebody who schools you now in the mob, okay? And I also had my own little drug crew. Now, the reason they wanted me mainly was because I was good at what I was doing, but the money I was making with the cocaine, they wanted a piece of. And I was all too happy to pay, because the way it works, the way the structure goes, a certain percentage that one is making, they have to kick that upstairs to their capo. Their capo has to kick it upstairs to the boss of the family. And, there's many capos in the family I was in. There was many capos, there was many crews, there was many zips from Sicily that would come down, and the zips, basically all the crews of that family, nothing to sleep on, but I'm out of all that stuff now, so it really doesn't even matter or interest me anymore. It really doesn't. Because basically, I was risking my neck. I was putting my life on the line, my safety on the line, ducking bullets and everything else out here in the streets, and taking a percentage of it and kicking it up to somebody else to be a part of something, to be part of the club. Okay, well, whatever. And yeah, they use a knife on me. I got my finger was cut in part of the ceremony, and you have to say some words, and that one soul will burn in hell. It's a blood covenant, is what it is. It's a ritual. It's a blood sacrifice ritual, basically, I mean, there's no sacrifice other than your own blood being burned on a Catholic saint. But yeah, it is a magic ritual, whether people realize it or not. So, once I was made, I had pretty good business going, right? I had some stuff going on in Canada. Like I said, I was moving about 40 pounds a month of hydro back and forth, not back and forth, but from Toronto to Buffalo. Now, I was working with the triads out there, which is the Chinese mob. Okay, I will only use the word mafia for the Sicilians because it's our thing. It's mafia means bravery, brave man. When they use mafia for other things, they're not the mafia. The Sicilians are the mafia, Cosa Nostra. Okay, even the Calabrians, they got the Ndrangheta, and the Napolitans and Neapolitans, they've got Camorra. They're not mafia, okay? Only Sicilian. And in the days when I was made, you had to be Sicilian or Italian. You could not be half Irish, okay? And there was another thing that a person had to do proficiently to become a member, and I think I spoke about what a made person has to be. So I'll go back to the first part, the first testimony video, if you want to know about that. So basically, I had 5 girls, right, that they were running back and forth from Buffalo to Toronto, picking up over there. Because my guy had he was young too. He was coming up in the ranks of his people with the triads very quickly. He was a little older than me, I think. Yeah, a couple years, not much. And he had his own crew. I mean, we were doing it, all right? So one girl would go every week. Basically, we'd rent a car. She would go up. They would put the weed in the tire of the car, in the spare. And sometimes if they felt it wasn't safe to bring it back, I would get word that, okay, we're going to stay a couple of days out here, take the girls to the Eaton Center in Toronto, do some shopping, have a little fun, whatever, when it was safe, come back across, okay? And once it got stateside, it was my responsibility. So what happened was, now I mentioned my daughter's mother. I had found out that I was going to be a father. So by this time, I am a father, okay? Was I a father yet? No, actually, I wasn't yet. She was still pregnant. Her mother, right, my baby's mother's mother, kept bugging me to put her on. She wanted to be one of the girls that was driving. I was very much against it because I don't crap where I eat, right? But after hearing that song for so long, I said, okay. All right, I'll put you on. You want to play a man's game? These are the rules. If, God forbid, something should happen, don't you ever rat. Don't you open your mouth. I'll get you a lawyer. I don't care if the feds tell you you'll never see your children again. They're liars. They lie to people because all they get their cases from people telling them things. That's it. They get their info from rats. If you don't rat, they got nothing. So, sure enough, one night, I get the call about 2, 3 in the morning. Her voice, I'm in jail. I said, come on, don't mess with me. I didn't say it like that. I said it more choice. But yeah, no, she was for real. She was in jail. I said, don't say nothing. I'll take care of it. Where are you? Where'd they get you? They got her at the Rainbow Bridge. Now, that's not no LGBT crap. There's the Rainbow Bridge and the Peace Bridge to get to Canada. She was supposed to come back on the Peace Bridge. For some reason, they said Rainbow Bridge. Now, when she got there, there was alphabet soup there. The DEA, the ATF was even there, the FBI, the state police, all of that. What happened was, she was set up. She was set up by the guy that I had managing that part of my business. See, because at that time, I couldn't go to Canada myself because I think I was on paper at the time. I was a felon already, and I could not go to Canada because they had a very strict rule. First of all, no felons over the border. So he was my voice out there. This rat bastard snitched. I find out because he got hit at his house with like, I think they found like 16 pounds or something. Like he would have got 10 years. But see, how I met this cat, this rat that set up my baby's mother's mother and ruined the shipment of mine, was he was in prison, right? For rape, by the way. He was a rapist. And this crew of brothers, when I say a crew of brothers, I mean they were brothers. And they were brothers. So there was four of them. Two of them were around. The other two were gone. They kept telling me, yo, this cat is just like you. Y'all are gonna, like, y'all gotta meet when he comes home. Y'all gonna be a dangerous team. Yeah, okay. So when the dude came home from prison, I picked him up. He didn't know me from Adam, but I picked him up. And you know what? We clicked. We did click. And within 2 weeks, we did more dirt together than most guys that were on my crew that I had for years. He was a rat. Not the whole time, that I know of. But he snitched on this situation. Okay? And it was very tough because now I had to scramble. I had lost a shipment. And I remember the papers in those days, the newspapers. They were making lies up, saying that there was heroin found, there was a key of cocaine, there was all this stuff. No, there wasn't. There was 11 pounds of marijuana, and there was supposed to only be 7, because back in those days, I used to yell at them for this, for overstuffing the tire, because the guys at the border, the customs agents, they knew what was up, you know, because this was right after 9/11, mind you. We did not care. After 9/11, full force, we still were doing our thing, trafficking back and forth. Now, mind you, this was only my marijuana business. I never had this guy. He had nothing to do with my cocaine business. That was a whole separate thing, had nothing to do with him. But he was my voice in Canada because he could go there. He was not on paper at the time. That's what it was, because there had to be a certain amount of time to be, I think it was 3 years. And then they've changed the law since then, but he was up there. Not always, but he was going back and forth. He didn't have a problem. I couldn't go. So what happens from here is I got to start chasing money in the street. I didn't know he was a rat yet for like 2 weeks. So I'm doing what I can, collecting this and that. People, they're not getting their shipment because we lost our shipment. My relationship up north with the Chinese was kind of stressed because everybody's trying to figure out what the hell is going on. I remember one time the FBI actually robbed me. Let me tell you what happened. I was coming out of a pawn shop, right? I had to pawn my baby's mother's engagement ring. I had to pawn it. Right on Bailey Avenue, there was a big pawn shop there. I was coming out of there, and 2 guys in suits, boom, throw me up against the wall. They were feds, and they robbed me. I had $7,000 in change, and they took it off of me. What are you going to do when the FBI robs you? So just so you know that, people, you know, the government, they don't care. They don't care. Everything they do is to further their career. Okay, so next thing that happens was this situation caused a lot of beef with my baby's mother and I. While she ended up having our daughter, and our daughter was like 2 months at this time that I'm going to tell you about. But see, me and this guy, the rat, I said we did a lot of dirt together. One of the things we did, there was we robbed a young boy. He was a teenager for 5,000 pills of ecstasy. He was the son of a made guy in the Buffalo family who's got a few collision shops. He didn't have that kind of weight, the ecstasy, but he had a girlfriend in Canada who was getting it and bringing it over. Now, ecstasy guys in those days, we looked at them as half a fags. We didn't look at them as gangsters. I didn't like selling pills in those days because I didn't feel it was drugs. I mean, this is how warped my mind was. So, make a long story short, we ended up robbing this dude. We printed up fake money and everything. It was something we planned for months. And one night we got the call. He was ready, and I beat him with a blackjack. It's a lead thing I got from one of the bikers. That was one of my customers, one of the biker gangs out there. And yeah, so we had gotten 5,000. It was actually supposed to be 5,000 pills of ecstasy. It was 4,800 of them by the time we counted all of our stuff up and divvied it up. They were all green smileys. So I don't know if y'all remember those or whatever, but yeah, so that's that. I sold mine. Now, what happened was, fast forward a little bit, because my daughter's mother, she was pregnant at the time and she was working, I think it was at like a daycare or something. And she kept telling me she was being followed. But it was weird because the people would always be ahead of her. And I didn't believe her. I thought she was just bugging. But it turns out I was with her in the car one day. She was driving, and sure enough, there was some fishy stuff going on. So I thought I'd catch up to them. Caught up to them. We got side by side in the car. I started reaching. I got my piece. They pumped the brakes right on the throughway out there. And, so that's when I knew something was coming back from this beef with stealing all this ecstasy. So we went to the guy, the boy that we robbed, his father's collision shop, walked right in there and basically told the man, how's it feel to know you got a girl for a son? Because the way he ran when I beat him, and the man pulled a gun on us right in his office. And my partner at the time, the guy that was taking care of my stuff in Canada, he had to defuse the situation because he was a good talker. And he kind of did. He basically, the deal was look, we're not going to hurt your son. He probably wants to go to church now, be a good boy. We kept telling him for months he's cutting our throats with this ecstasy. And he can't be doing that. He did anyway, so we taught him a lesson. We ain't going to take it no further. If this is you coming after us, stop. We respect you. We don't want no problem. So that was that, and that basically was the end of that. Now, I bring all that up for this reason, because fast forward a little bit, while my daughter's mother is sitting in jail, I did get her a lawyer, and now she's she's batsh crazy herself, okay? The judge, the lawyer, nobody liked her, because she was just nuts. She was a psychologist that she lost her license in the 80s. I was never able to find out why, but she lost it. And but she never ratted. She kept her mouth quiet. And at the end of the day, she only did, I think, a little over a year in Niagara County. They only kept her in the county, too. Anyway, me and my daughter's mother were having problems. My daughter was like 2 months old. So I had papers that I was going to serve her in court for custody of my daughter. So what happened was, this guy, the rat, I didn't know he was a rat yet, comes to my house one evening with a female, a girlfriend, right? And I'm very stressed out because my daughter, this drama, all this stuff, new father. And we hang out. I wanted to go out and party that night and just blow steam. It didn't happen like that. They had other intentions. The next morning, I'm going to leave my house. I opened the door, and it's a good thing I opened it when I did, because they were there with the battering ram about to bust my door down. FBI, DEA, state police, you name it, they were there. Alphabet soup. They cuffed me to the chair of my dining room table at the time. They destroyed my house. No respect. There was one guy, one cop there. He was a narcotics cop. I'm not going to mention his name. But he used to follow me around a lot in those days. And I knew he would follow me because he'd be at the bar drinking. He was an alcoholic. Sometimes I even buy him shots. I'd fake moves in front of him just to piss him off and get him going. He was the only one that was respectful. when they raided my house. Now, like I said, I don't crap where I eat. They come out with a bag of green smileys from my bedroom because that rat bastard and his girlfriend, who I found out later was a federal agent, planted them somewhere in my room the night before when he's supposed to be my friend, right? Rat bastard. I am jumping up and down screaming, what the F is that? What the F is that? That's not mine. It should not have been there. But the thing that was getting me as I'm freaking out, like, what is this? They're telling, the feds are telling me, oh, we got a B felony now. You're going away for life. You might as well have you give your daughter up for adoption. That's what they said to me, these bastards. So I'm thinking, what is he still doing with all those pills? I got rid of my joints like months ago, and he's got like 500 of them things left. So I'm cuffed to behind the chair. They arrest me, obviously, throw me in the car, and the first thing they start talking about is, hey, do you like Chinese food? And I started laughing because I knew where they were going with this. They wanted the people in Canada. I said, listen, I said, the dinosaurs were killed by the rats. I'm a dinosaur. That rat bastard, and I gave his name to them. I said, that rat bastard that works for y'all got nothing. Because that rat mother, and I kept using his name because I know that when I knew very well at this point, because I had been arrested quite a few times at this point, how to deal with police and the fact that every single thing you do, they record. This was before they had the body cameras, though. They still recorded everything. They knew everything. One time I had to go in front of a judge in Cheektowaga, New York, right? And there was two judges that were very hated at that time. And I said, which one I got to see? I said, they were both effed in the ass as children. And you know what? They read that in court the next day. Like, they record everything. So anyway, they were trying to get me to rat. The only thing I gave them was that rat bastard's name. Take me to jail. Go to jail. Get a ridiculous bail bond. Sat there. 5 days, they got to give a person a felony hearing. So at the felony hearing, my lawyer argued the situation and got my bail reduced down to $50,000. Put it up, got out. Now my lawyer's talking to me. I'm meeting with my lawyer later on the 5th day when I got out. He's telling me, look, we're going to plead you down. You're going to probably do maybe 5 years. And I'm like, no. Listen. We're going to trial. These are the feds. We're going to trial. That was not mine. You do realize if you lose, you can face 25 years to life. Because at that time it was like ecstasy. That amount was like the equivalent of literally getting red-handed with a kilo of cocaine, 2.25 pounds. Here you go. So my lawyer is trying to talk me out of, no, you're going to take a plea because if you blow trial, you're done. The minute we announced that we were going to trial, guess who dropped the case? And this is how God has always been on my side because they never do this. They got like a 97% conviction rate. The FBI dropped the case. They let it go and the state picked it up. So now it went from a federal case to a state case. The reason behind it was all they had was that rat. They had that rat that was committing violent crimes with me to get the ecstasy they planted. They didn't want all that. Once they knew I was not going to rat, because they wanted the people in Canada, and then they wanted one of the wise guys in Buffalo. I think he's passed away now, Butchie Bifocal. They wanted him. And then that triggered me because I remember this rat bastard was messing around with Butchie's daughter at the time. So I'm like, this dude has just been just going everywhere trying to get everybody. So what happened was I beat them in trial. They had a terrible case. The stuff was planted. My client, he's not an angel, but you know, this stuff was planted. He's not in the game anymore. He's in college. He wants to be a doctor. His fingerprints were nowhere on the pills nor on the bags. Had my fingerprints been on that stuff, it probably would have, had I not been cuffed behind the damn chair, because I would have grabbed it and thrown it at the wall. My prints were nowhere on it. They took it all into account. I beat them. I beat the state case. I beat them. Do you know what that did? They get a bruised ego. And then they tighten up their surveillance on you even further. Everywhere I went. Now, at this point in my life, I couldn't leave my house without committing like 5 felonies. One thing I forgot to mention during the whole trial that I had gone through in those days was at one point in time during that whole thing, I guess you could say, and this I've never told anybody, I tried to whack myself. Let me tell you what happened. I had just become a father. I had just gotten ratted on and was facing 25 to life. I was not going to become a snitch. I was taking my whole future in my hands, and at the time, I believed that if there is any justice in this just us society, that I'm going to get it. But the devil would creep in and put thoughts in my head. So one day, when I came home, I took every single pill that was in the house I took. And I was drinking, and the funny thing was, I was even on the phone with the woman who I was going to serve papers to, my baby's mother. And she heard how I sounded, and she actually called 911. They showed up, and they were about to leave. I told them nothing was wrong, she's crazy, I don't know. Then I started vomiting uncontrollably. Started throwing up all the medication I had taken. They rushed me to ECMC. I almost died there. Because I was going into liver failure, kidney failure, all that stuff. They had to pump my stomach, charcoal, the whole 9. The 72-hour hold in the psych ward. That was a whole crazy thing, all of its own. The medication they gave me was called Mucomist. It was a drink. It tasted terrible. I think 2 or 3 times a day I had to drink it. And the second I would drink it, I would start pissing out of my ass, diarrhea. Like, it was terrible because my system had to get cleansed. So that's just a nice little story there on top of it, but it also shows you God's grace and mercy on me at that time, because I did not die and I don't have liver problems today. All praise be to God for that. So I want to talk about corruption, though, in the legal system, especially in Buffalo, because that's where I can't even tell you how many times I've been arrested. Now, was I arrested for righteous reasons in the eyes of the law? Most of the time, yes. When I'm talking about corruption, though, there are times where I was in a county or a town court that, you know, they can't handle big cases. They have to give it to the city, you know, if it's not a federal case, you know. After that thing with the feds, though, they kind of never stopped watching me, but they never had nothing to bring another case on me, the feds. But they never stopped watching. The DEA watched. The state most definitely watched. But the corruption I'm talking about happens in a court where they would drop charges down to a lower level so that they could handle it. There were times where my lawyer would correct judges in court because they were trying to illegally do something to me. And I had one gangster of a lawyer, I'm not going to mention his name, but he's a big guy in Buffalo. And even after some time, he got tired of dealing with me because it just never ended. And there were times where the court would take my bail money as, because I remember one time I was getting sentenced, right? And the judge was like, well, we see he can complete paper, he can complete probation, he's done time, while we're going to hurt him in his pocket. And they took my money for bail. I didn't care. Nothing's better than freedom. Let me tell you, nothing is better than freedom. So one of the guys, and see, when I had that ecstasy, like I said, when we robbed that dude, I felt funny even selling it because I was a dope dealer, you know. And one of the things was what I would do. I would take 100 packs. So I would put packs of 100 or packs of 10, and have my guys, pump them out in different neighborhoods. One of the guys ended up getting hit by a cab. He almost died. He was in the hospital for like 2 years. They had to cut the top of his skull off, keep it in his stomach because his brain swelled. And they kept saying, he's going to be like a little child if he ever wakes up from the coma. He woke up one day like nothing. Normal. Gave his life to the Lord way before I ever did. It just goes to show you from goon to glory. That's kind of a theme I want to keep with this, because I know I'm not preaching the word of God right now. I'm giving my testimony, and it's very raw and can be very, I don't know, it can change people's minds. So I am nervous about that, but this is real, and this is what it is. One of the interesting things now, as time went by, here, let me not forget that. That's a big thing. So after the trial, I was looking for the rat, and I couldn't find him. I was gonna blow up his mother's house. Whether she was in it or not, I didn't care at the time, because I wanted to drive him out of whatever hole he was in to come out and face the music. I didn't do that though, thank God. New York had called me, and I had to go there for a few times because they were concerned. And they wanted, let me watch what I say here. They gave me a choice where I could either, you know what, we're going to strike that part from the record. But the rat situation was satisfied. So, there was a neighborhood called Bennett Village. So, there was one guy. I just want to give a little story. Nas, the rapper, right? This is a little further down in the timeline now. He had done some. He had come to Buffalo, did a little business with us, things like that. There was a guy Italian guy. He was a little hang-arounder, and he was running with this known rip and run, who was a guy who robbed drug dealers. And this guy, he was small potatoes. Like, he bought a half ounce at a time. And then all of a sudden, he wanted to buy like 3 ounces. So there was a red flag right there. And I told my guy, one of my guys who was in Bennett Village, I said, look, I know somebody's trying to set me up right now for 3 onions. And let's just see what happens. He's like, nah, man, that's stupid. Why are you even entertaining it? So anyway, make a long story short, one night, at first I thought he was a rat but then I knew he was running with this rip and run dude. So I'm like, it's a robbery. Let's see what these boys are made of. So I go to meet him with the work, and this was at a McDonald's, and in the back there was a Home Depot. It was on Elmwood. if y'all know Buffalo. So he was acting all weird. I pulled up. He's out of the, like, get in the car. Hops in, he's acting all weird. I opened the thing, showed him the work, where's the money? We gotta go back there. No, we're not doing that. We're not doing that. Get the F out of my car. He gets out of the car and he goes to the back where Home Depot is, and I knew something was up. That's where they were gonna rob me. So I pull out and I start driving to Bennett Village, and I'm getting phone calls and they're being stupid. They're threatening this and that. I said, okay. Go to Kim's Express and we'll see what's what. Go to Kim's Express. For y'all that know, Kim's Express is a Chinese restaurant on the east side where it's a very live neighborhood. I had a trap house across the street there on the other side. So when I got to Bennett Village, which is a project, sort of, my guys there, armed up, suited up, went to the spot, and I was gonna go meet them at Kim's, and they were all gonna get chopped up, if y'all know what I mean. They never showed up. Funny thing is, this is how small the world is. I end up doing time, right? At one point, I ended up doing time for some whatever, I don't even know what it was. And I'm in Erie County. I'm on Echo Unit, right? And I see this big Puerto Rican guy, like 6'5", 6'6", big Puerto Rican dude. He keeps staring at me. I'm staring at him. I'm like, I'm going to have to deal with this guy. So the second day I was on that unit, he comes to me with shampoos and soaps and all this stuff. And he's like, yo, you Gaetano? Yeah. I'm not going to mention his name because we actually we became friends. I'm so-and-so. He was the guy who orchestrated that robbery, the failed robbery on me. And I was like, why would you ever get a knucklehead idiot like that dude, the Italian guy, and the other guy who was running with the rip and run, like, against me? Like, what's wrong with you? So anyway, it was an interesting story because he ended up going upstate for quite a few years, and I ended up getting bailed out at some point and went home and fought the case, and I don't even remember what case it was. Honestly, I really don't know. There's been so many of them. But I used to send him kites, I used to send him packages, all kinds of things, kept in contact with him, and that's just, and this was a guy that orchestrated a robbery on me. So that just goes to show you the type of cat that I even was in those days. The Italian guy that tried to rob me in that story, he ended up getting so coked out one night, that he went through a sliding glass door and like jumped through it and got all cut up by the glass and died and had a heart attack. I was so bent out of shape that now he had a baby and I think a young wife at the time, and she threw a memorial for him to try to raise money and this and that. I forbade anybody to go to it, to the point where if anybody did show up to this thing, aside from like immediate family, they would be met with some hostility and get robbed and beat down. So nobody showed up to his thing, to his memorial. That's also the type of guy that I was. So, yeah, so moving on, some of the other things that I did, because at the age of 24, I became a capo. I was making so much money and doing so well, had my hands in so many different things, that they gave me my own crew. Now, I had my own crew, but I was no longer on somebody else's crew in the city. I had my own, And a lot of benefits came with that. I even got 2.5% corporate ownership of top supermarkets. Now, 2.5% doesn't really sound like a lot, but when you're dealing with like a $1 billion company, 2.5% ain't bad, and it's legit money, you know. Other things that I had going on, we did parlay cards, the football cards. Initially, there was a crew in Rochester that had made the cards for me, and they were backing it financially. So I basically just distributed them to different restaurants, clubs, and things like that. And after a couple weeks, I realized, you know, there's so few winners, but the winners there are, we can pay them out from all the money that's coming in from all the different ones. Because I had a crew. I had a crew of, I think, like 6, 7 guys that were actually my crew guys. And then they had their own. So, like, we had the entire surrounding area of Western New York parlay cards. You know what I'm saying? It made a lot of money. Football squares in bars, restaurants, nightclubs, things like that. $500 a square. Some of them are $25 a square. Whatever. We had our hands in all of that stuff. So then I burned the Rochester crew. I burned them just flat out. What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do with my own name? You're gonna fight me? Come on, you can't do that. So I would abuse my power. You know what I'm saying? Also, when I became a capo. Now, I became a soldier very young at 21. I became a capo at 24. It's not unheard of, but because there's guys that have been made way before, younger than me. But I was very young to be made. I was very young to become a capo. Most guys never, once they get made, they never become a capo because they just don't have it. They don't have it in them. I had that hustle, I had that drive, I had that vision. Because, I mean, it wasn't just drugs. I mean, the drug thing was what I was kind of like forced into because at first nobody would deal with me in the Buffalo family, and I wasn't with them anyway. So, but it was always like I kind of antagonized them a bit. Even like my headquarters, if you want to call it that, it wasn't no social club and crap like that you see in movies. It was across the street from La Nova, directly across, because the way that place is, the one on the west side, on Hampshire, it is, I think, whatever. Anyway, the street kind of bifurcates and goes two ways. On the right side, coming from Niagara, there's 3 storefronts. One of them was an empty storefront. My cousin, who was a minister, is a minister still, owned that. The second one, I think, was a barber shop, and the third one was like a bodega. So at one point, I was going to open up with a cousin of mine, different cousin of mine. We were going to do a sportswear and apparel there. It became a Boost Mobile recently. When I say recently, I mean within the past few years. I think it's a Boost Mobile. I don't know if it still is or not. Anyway, it had a storefront. It had a unit in the back, apartment unit, and an apartment unit upstairs. That was where, if people had to see me, that's where they saw me. Now, what I did was no electronics, no phones, no nothing. Whoever had to come see me, they would have to park on Niagara Street, leave their car there, walk a ways up with nothing on them. And then I had my guys, because we would buy stuff from the spy shop to make sure, anti-bugging stuff, you know, to make sure this person wasn't wearing a wire, they had no technology on them, that they were basically not there. So that's how it was. And the place was so, like, the building is from the 1800s. And it wasn't really renovated. So it was a scary place to be in. Plus, you know, if need be, there's a spot in the back and there's a spot upstairs if, you know, things go south. So, and it was across from Lenova, which pissed them off. And I liked to do that in those days. So, what else is there? Little interesting tidbits that I want to bring up to you guys. So they also had given me 2, when they made me, when they made me a capo, they gave me 2 soldiers from Queens. Okay, 2 actual made soldiers from Queens that were now on my crew. Okay, cool. So I had opened up a restaurant in '05 called Brocco's. I opened it up with a partner who was a straight guy. He wasn't a criminal. He was a Sicilian. And I hired a chef who he was a partner too. He was a crackhead. He was an amazing chef, but he was a crackhead. He had that weakness. And yeah, so that was open for a minute, and I had issues with building the place. We were doing blacktop one day. It was in the city of Kenmore, which is police there are terrible, especially dealing with me. So what was the point of that? Oh yeah, okay. So this was the point of that. At this time, I had done my pre-med courses, and I think I had just taken my MCAT and was starting med school. Also, that was the time that, around the time that they gave me my button, my capo button. See how the devil is? I could have been a doctor. I opened up a restaurant, and they gave me a boost. It's very, very interesting. At this time, I had an entire project that every single bit of heroin or cocaine came from me. It was a project on the west side. I'm not going to say which one. I had it down to where the corner boys, they didn't even know I was the one running it when I would go through, because there was two houses there that were like my managerial houses. They did not know who actually ran those projects, because that's how one has to be. Another thing, once I was a capo, I had different trap houses. Actually, I skipped ahead a bit. There was one guy who he did business with. It was like he was a black guy, and he did business on the east side with his family, with his father, his uncle, and his brother. And this was before I was made, though. He was a good worker, you know what I mean? He was moving weed for me. And he got too big for his britches, though, because he opened up his own trap without telling me. And there were consequences to that. I had the people, his own people, they cornered him one day, put him up against the wall, and they basically, they molested him because he had done that. And then he wasn't happy about, getting touched like that. And there were other things, it was a problem. I'm going to leave it at that. That was that. Now, I did say, and this is true, that any criminal stuff I'm talking about, the 7 years have gone by. There was no statute. The statute of limitations has run out, in other words, so I could talk about these things. And they happened so long ago that, whatever. It is what it is. This is to show you where I come from, okay? I had another lady, an older black lady on the east side, who ran a different type of trap for me. It was all pills. It was Lortabs, Opanas, any kind of narcotic you could think of. Pills, though, because I like to separate that stuff in those days, And then the West Side Projects was for the coke and the heroin, and there were other various ones out there. I had absolutely no affiliation with Getry, which, if you're from out there, you know what Getry is. The police actually own that. That's no secret either. So, so I had this one restaurant. That wasn't enough. By '07, I had opened up another one, and I had named it Filippo's after Filippo, who was one of the soldiers they gave me from Queens. Okay. He ended up getting a little too big for his britches, and he was teamed up and started doing work with a guy. I'm not going to mention his first name, His last name is Gambino, and yes, he is related by blood to the Carlo Gambino. But a complete idiot. And Filippo just loved doing business with this guy. And I kept telling him to stop it, knock it off, stop having this guy at the restaurant, stop it. He didn't stop. And he got on a big case with this guy. This guy had the nerve, this Gambino guy, to go to one of my younger boys that worked for me. And he was from Grand Island. So he got into a beef with a guy from Grand Island, and he threatened him, saying, "Oh, you're gonna have an accident tomorrow," and blah 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 blah. So he went to one of my younger boys and tried to recruit him to get in a car accident, just so he could pretend that he's a big guy. Anyway, they ended up getting knocked, not for that, but Filippo and him and others got into the business that I told him not to get into, and he ended up doing, I think. 500 and some months in the feds. I think that's what, 10 years? So I don't know. I can't think, because the feds, they sentence in months, not years. But I think he did like 10 years. I think he's out by now. I don't know. I had left by that point. Clubbing was a big thing. One of my guys, if you're from Buffalo and you know the name Luigi, yeah, he was one of my guys. And y'all have probably seen us in the clubs, Club Crystal and any of them, all of them out there. Had a lot of fun. A cousin of mine had also owned one of the biggest ecstasy spots at the time, not Club E, but Java Records. Java Records was supposed to be, during the day, it was a record company, buy music there at night, and food as well. And at night, it was a rave that ended at 7, 8 in the morning. And that cousin, he's a lawyer too. He was a lawyer then. But he had, the biggest ecstasy spot in the city. One of them at least. So, I'm just looking at my notes here. I don't want to miss too many things. So yeah, then, my crew, they had gone out to Atlanta. It's funny that I'm in Atlanta now. But in '05, they had gone out to Atlanta for vacation. I couldn't go. I had to stay home and watch the shop. I had to work. But I'm in Atlanta now. We had a beef one time at Filippo's during the Italian Fest. Now, during the Italian Fest, they showed The Sopranos. One year, James Gandolfini and the guy that played Junior, Uncle June, what's his name? I want to say Chianti. That's a wine. What was his name? Anyway, Uncle Junior and Tony Soprano, we met them. They were coming in on Hurdle Avenue. That's where Filippo's was on Hurdle Avenue. And they came in to show out, to show up. Uncle Junior, he's a singer in real life. And it was like the TV Mafia. They came to meet the real Mafia. And I was there, obviously, and there was a few Buffalo guys there that I was friendly with. They even had a big party, the Buffalo guys, at our restaurant, all of them, which is one of the stupidest things that could be done. But it was done. I think it was in '07 or '08. All of them, anybody who was somebody was at my restaurant after hours. They had a party there. I don't even remember what it was for. But those are see, because one thing the government likes to do is make conspiracies. You shake hands with a friend. Oh, it's a conspiracy to commit murder. They're Italians and they're doing evil. Give me a break. Give me a break. So I had gotten a liquor store as well. It was the guy who owned the liquor store had got into a big debt with one of the Buffalo guys. I bought the guy's debt, and then I pressed him, and I took his store. It was on Grant Street. Big liquor store there. I bet y'all can guess which one it was. Another thing I did while being a capo was I had 2 call centers. What does that mean? Well, in those days, we would buy what was called bad paper. Bad paper is debts that people legal debts that they don't want to pay. So for $50,000 or so, I used to buy about $500,000 worth of debt for $50,000. So now I own it. I open up two shops and call center people. You know, they call these people and they scare them, they lie to them, they threaten them in a way to get them to pay their debts. And it worked. They would pretend that they were from so and so lawyer, big lawyer name we just made up, and they would tell them, oh, you know, the FBI. We would use the tactics that the government uses on us. We were using that on people to get them to pay their legal debts. And believe me, a lot of them did. Another thing that I did, being the wicked bastard I was, my workers there that were making the calls, most of them liked drugs, narcotics, meaning opiates. So I got them all hooked on opiates. Not that I did it, but most of them had a problem. I just made sure it was easy for them. They didn't have to go nowhere. They come to work, they could get their dope, and that way I had like slaves, because when I pay them, the money just comes right back to me. Oh, you already gave me your check back. Do you need a loan? You see how it works? And I had one of my guys that was in my crew. The guy loved robbing banks. He was pretty good at it for a while too. He got caught once, went, did a bid, came home. And then after a certain amount of time, it was like he just loved robbing banks. He went and did it again and got caught. And I saw him again after I was already out. He showed up at one of my houses with a bunch of work and wanted to get back into the game. Anyway, but yeah, so that's the kind of thing that I would do. You know, that's the kind of things that I was in. Now, I know I mentioned Rudy Giuliani. Rudy Giuliani is a race traitor. And he's getting what he's got coming to him now, I guess. But I got to make this very clear, what I'm about to say. I am not threatening you, Rudy. This is not a threat. It's not even a promise. This is something that could have happened to you back in 2009. I did not have an order. There was no contract. However, I could have killed Rudy Giuliani in 2009. Rudy Giuliani was at E.B. Green's Steakhouse. He was dining with one other individual. And I knew he was going to be there for about a week. I cooked for you, Rudy. And I very easily could have poisoned you and killed you. Or I could have very easily just shot you there or done anything to you. I would have got caught, but I also would have been the biggest hero in federal prison, because Carmine Persico was alive. He just recently died a few years ago, but you know what I mean? Like, he really hated you. Every wise guy hates Rudy Giuliani because he put them in prison. He's a race traitor, and now his biggest client, Donald Trump, has got, and he's his lawyer, right? He's Donald Trump's lawyer. So yeah, I could have whacked Rudy Giuliani. But I didn't, because I would have got caught for it, even though, you know, I would have had the best life in prison, but freedom means a lot more to me, because it was a situation where I couldn't have got out of it. Plus, there was no order to do it. So do not misconstrue what I'm saying. But yeah, Rudy, between, I don't remember exactly when it was, but it was in '09. It was between April before October, in between there. I think it was summertime. You were there. Check your itinerary. Anyway, whatever. Now Michael Francisi wants to be friends with you. What is wrong with you, Michael? Anyway, yeah, so I see this is going... Let me get one more little story here. And then we're going to get to the man who matters, and that's Jesus Christ. So yeah, when during the days of Filippo's at the Italian Fest, we had a beef one time with, I think the guy was Dominican. And there could have been some shots fired, some back and forth. This was not the time that the Sopranos came and we met them. This was another time after that, I think a couple years after that. There was a cop that we knew who worked for us. He was an MOB COP, if you know what I mean. And he was doing security for us at Filippo's during the Italian Fest, during the Festa. And yeah, so during that time, there could have been some, you know, we had a nice, our driveway, we had tented up, and we had like iced wines and stuff we were selling. And then on the street, because you can't use the restaurant during the festival. So on the street, we had like a little stand. We did calamari, chicken parm, stuff like that. And we made $90,000 in one weekend. I remember that. But there could have been a big beef, big guns going back and forth because of issues with a Dominican drug dealer that we had at the time. And yeah, so and nothing ever popped off. But I could go on and on and on and on and on and on and on about this stuff. I'm going to cut the testimonies off here. In 2011, however, I was in prison. I was not saved yet. And I remember there being a guy, his name was Stan, even. I remember his name, Stan. He was locked up, and I was in a dorm in this bid. And in dorms, there was like 50 guys in a big dormitory, bunk beds, and I had a top bunk, he had a top bunk next to me. And the guy was always reading the Bible. All lockdown, he was always reading the Bible. And I found it fascinating, And so that was like a little nudge that God was giving me. Plus, any beef you got in the street, when you're in prison, you got to face your enemies. Because it's a small world. It's a smaller world than the streets. And the streets are a very small world. So this one cat, he was a hitman. He was a hitter. East Side cat. Rolled around in Tonawanda though too. Anyway, so we had an issue, me and this cat, over a car. A very stupid thing. And I knew he was doing a bid. I had recently come in to do a bid, and I was walking out of church, and not because I was religious or really had given my life to the Lord yet, but church, it was a way to get off the unit, you know what I mean? And the guy caught me slipping because I got the daily bread that we got in the church, and I'm walking back to my unit feeling good from the sermon, not paying attention to nothing. Boom! The guy got me from behind. I had the shower shoes on. As I'm turning around, I'm sliding, and I fell on my ass. And by the time I got up, dude had took off. I was going to go after him, obviously. But the COs had hemmed me up against the corner. By that point, the other COs had chased him down. Ended up going to the hole for that, right? Maybe we got to the hole, I was able to, I don't know, God was so good. I was able to sneak off a phone call to my people. Yo, I'm in the box, just so you know. Get off the phone, boom. Mean old lady CO in the hole. So anyway, I'm there, right? And nothing is worse than being locked up 23 hours a day in a closet. Being let out for 15 minutes. You could either choose to get a book or take a shower. And that was it. Back in, and then 1 hour, you can go out for rec. Walk around the square. So, I was in prison for a stupid reason because, anytime there's an altercation, everybody goes to the hole. So I did say a prayer there, and I said, God, if this is where you want me to be right now, in the prison of the prison, I will not complain about it. I'll take my medicine. At that very moment, the door opened. Castellano! Pack it up. Going back to your unit. Okay. Because I had written a grievance to get up out of there. I wasn't there for very long. I think I was there for like a week or 2 weeks. It was just the circumstances why I was there that I was so pissed off about. Plus, I liked my unit at that time. You know what I mean? All right, so come 2013, right? I want to say this. I know I might have came off like showing off. I'm not showing off. This is just how I am when I talk. I wanted to give you all a clear picture of my life, some of it at that time, but I had nightmares constantly. Very bad nightmares. No peace whatsoever. Just as the word says, there is no rest for the wicked. That's true. I'd close my eyes. I would see people's faces. I would see them turn distorted and demonic very quickly. Screams, all kinds of things. I was tormented day and night. I could not sleep. And after years, a lifetime, since I was 15 years old, but even before that, because I had started doing bad things when I was 11, since 11 years old even, to the age of 33 at the time, I had enough. My mother had dreams of me falling into a pit of fire, and she couldn't get me out of it. But more than that, I had felt it in my heart that my time was coming to an end. I know for a fact I was not long for this world at that time. Whether I was going to be killed, most likely, that would have been the end result, because it was a heavy spirit of death that I felt, and I didn't even know that's what it was that I felt. So I was in my office one night actually, and I had enough. Now mind you, I had 5 houses. I had, I think, 6 cars at that time. I had so many cars that I couldn't even insure all of them at once under my insurance. I had so much money. I had women. I had everything a man could want. I had children. My son's mother was a different baby's mother. I wasn't even with her at that time though anymore. But she was good to have at the time I had her, because when I would fly out of town to go do things and whatever, she wouldn't complain. She wouldn't even know what the heck was going on. The woman I had at the time though, she was solid to a point, but God had to remove her from my life, because once I got saved, she took that as a joke. Because when I met her, she used to sell women. She was a female pimp. She was basically, she wasn't a pimp in the strict sense of the word. She was a madam. But anyway, I was in a very dark place. I felt death around me. All I knew was death. I was tired. I was tired, and I was weak. Nobody would know that I was weak though, because the front and the persona and the things I did, I was a bully to bullies. And I backed it up. If I did a kind deed, there was a place called Mother's, which was a restaurant, a fine dining restaurant open till 4 a.m. Sometimes I would go there just to have a dinner. Because there was a point in time where I wouldn't even be seen during the day. I yelled at one of my soldiers once for waking me up during the day, or bringing me out in public during the day. On a tirade in a car, I'm almost getting us in an accident, screaming, "Why you got me up during the day?" Because I was a child of the night. But there was something missing. There was a huge hole. And what that hole was God. He loved me. He protected me. And I cried out to him that night. And I said, "Jesus, if you are real, I need you to show me that you are real. If you can prove to me that you are God, and you could take away this feeling that I have, all the loss, the people I've lost, the people, I will give my life to you." And he showed up. The God of the universe showed up. And he filled me with his love. in his knowledge, in wisdom, in everything he could. It was like a flash. And I knew who Jesus Christ was. And I knew that he understood and that he forgave me for everything that I'd done. I still can't believe it sometimes. But God is real. And his name is Jesus Christ. I don't care what else you want to call him. He answers to that name. That's the name I cried out to. And that's the name that answered and filled me with all his wisdom. You know, he's revealed to me now that night, he told me that night I had to be a mouthpiece for him. I didn't know what that meant. I thought what that meant was, oh, I gotta be a pastor. Okay. But I'm realizing now, because the Holy Spirit has shown me that everything I ever needed to know, he gave me that night. But now it's coming back in Revelations as I read his word and spend time in the Spirit. There's nothing you could have done in this world. I don't care how many people you've taken off of it and played vengeance, because vengeance is the Lord's. You can be saved. I don't care how many times you've been on your knees sucking, you can be saved. It doesn't matter. If you cry out to him in your lowest point and you're sincere, he will show up and he will change you. This happened 10 years ago, and look at how it gets me when I talk about it. 2013. And even after I was a puddle, a crying puddle like I am right now, and God, give me the strength not to edit this and leave this in. You know what God would do to me if I edited this? I don't know. I'm not going to edit it though, Lord. It took 2 years. 2 years. I knew that night that I couldn't stay in the Mafia. I couldn't continue to do the things I was doing. Because like I said before, I couldn't leave my house without committing 5 felonies. And that's not a joke. I didn't want to lose my lifestyle. But the word tells us those who try to save their life will lose it. And those who don't care about their life, they will find it. And that is true. Because I thought in my own ignorance at the time, I got to be a pastor. Okay. So that means I got to go to seminary school. The first thing I did though was I got me and my son and we went to the church down the street and we started going there and we went there. I'll talk about that on the last part of my testimony, not for this video. So what happened was I knew I couldn't live this life no more. It took 2 full years, but I changed that night. And I told my superior in New York City, I'm done, finished. I don't care. I'm done. So what they did, instead of killing me, they shelved me. Now, when they shelve someone, it's usually a very bad thing. It means that, you know, it'd be so easy just to kill you and get you out of the way. But to save us the trouble of having to kill you, we'll shelve you. They disinherit. They disinherited me. They took all my businesses away, legit and illegitimate. Didn't matter. I didn't care. I lost everything, everything that I had in this world. I had to sell my houses to survive. I had to sell my cars to survive. But it didn't matter because I was full of the joy and the peace of the Lord. He gave me a complete download of everything I would ever need to know. The 150 messages or 100 messages I got for y'all that I every day, the Holy Spirit is making me remember the messages He gave me that night. God, Lord willing, I'll be able to preach and teach to y'all. And deliverance is real. God has given me self-deliverance before any so-called man of God ever did. And deliverance is an ongoing thing. We'll get into that in another video, in the last video. Even though they shelved me in 2018, when I was a minister by this point, they tried to pull me off the shelf to do something. And at this point, I was extremely expendable to them, you know. But I refused it. Obviously, I refused it because God also told me that day if I ever did a certain thing again, He would remove His protection from off of me. So I was street preaching one day, and I saw the move. A guy pulled up. I was on Main Street, 1235, I think, or 1237 Main Street in Buffalo, outside of a methadone clinic preaching. I think it was a van or an SUV pulled up. One guy in it, Italian guy. I saw him sitting there. Right here, I'm on the street preaching, sidewalk. There's another street here, then you go that way, or down, and go that way. Two guys hop out. And I don't even know what I said, but I know that they were hitters and they were supposed to kill me on the street for refusing to do a piece of work that I had gotten pulled off the shelf for in 2018. I was in the Spirit, though, and the Holy Ghost protected me because I started prophesying over them. They didn't even hire. I believe they were Haitians that they hired because they, you know. And I spoke to them. I said, you could be two Haitian hitters, and I don't even know what I said. But these two guys, I saw their demeanor change, and I trusted in God. Because I didn't have my, I don't have my Bible here, but I had my Bible, and I knew that that was my gun. That was my shield and protection and my sword. And I preached, and I watched these two men, their courage and anger and whatever they saw coming from me, from who was protecting me, scared the crap out of them to run. I saw it in their faces change. Run into this van, I think it was. One of them had an SUV, one had a van. I can't remember which was which. They got in, and the guy starts yelling at them. I see it, and I'm just preaching. And they took off. After that, I packed my stuff up, and I had to go to the local guy in the city at the pizzeria and reach out to New York City to get to the bottom of it. And that's not something for this testimony or for public consumption. And so concludes my seat in the Mafia for a spot at the Lord's table. I pray y'all got something from this and y'all know who I am and who I was, because I'm not ashamed of it. And I don't really want to ever have to speak about it again. If people have questions or whatever, I'll answer them to the best of my ability as far as the Lord leads. But this was it as far as that part of my testimony. There will be one more part coming up soon, and then after that we will get to all the juicy messages that the Lord has given me to share with y'all. And I'm very excited. I love you guys. If you need anything, reach out. I don't know what the email will be, but it'll be below. What do they say in YouTube land? Share, subscribe, hit the notifications, do all of that. But most importantly, if y'all need any type of ministerial stuff, reach out to me on the email and I'll get back to you. Until we meet again, may the Lord Jesus Christ of Nazareth bless, protect, and keep each and every single one of y'all. Bless.